Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, more particularly to all shepherds who are believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, to our brethren in Georgia, in Fiji Island, Mexico, Spain, in Africa, to the United Kingdom, and also to our brethren in Australia. And to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad, greetings. May the good Lord bless you and have a wonderful evening. This is our episode number 29 on the subject, the 12 figurative months. And at this time, I would like to focus to that statement, purification of the church. Reading again, answerer number 4, pages 22 and page 23, saying, the first part of the verse, Isaiah 63, pointing to Isaiah 63 verse 3. The first part of the verse applies to the first advent of Christ, and the last part to the time of the purification of the church. The last part is pointing to the statement saying, for I will tread them in mine anger, and trample them in my fury, and their blood shall be sprinkled upon my garments. And I will stain all my raiment. Who are they? The pronoun them in this prophetic verse, by which such prophetic verse, according to the shepherd's rod, applied to the time of the purification of the church. Then it says in page 23, that whoever continues to hold his people in bondage and in ignorance of his truth, will he tread in his anger, and trample them in his fury, and sprinkle their blood upon his garments, thereby staining all his raiment, and thus setting his people free. So the pronoun them in Isaiah 63 verse 3 is pointed directly to all of them who hold God's people in bondage. That if they will not stop such evil deed, if they will still continue to hold God's people in bondage and in ignorance of His truth, that is pointing to the present truth, God will tread them in His anger and trample them in His fury and sprinkle their blood upon His garments and thereby staining all His raiment and thus setting His people free. Now, let us go back again to SR 101. It says, separating the tares from the wheat. And to repeat again, such predicted event never been fulfilled in the days of Beti-Hotep. Beti-Hotep himself declared clearly in answerer number 1, page 18. It was written in 1944, saying, though the bad along with the good are still coming, for we are yet in the period in which the wheat and the tares, the good and the bad fish commingle. What period of time by which the wheat and the tares must be separated? In 1 TG, number 48, on page 20, it says, saint and sinner during the judgment for the living will no longer be commingled. So it is during the period of the judgment for the living by which the wheat and tares will no longer be commingled. In 4 Symbolic Code 4-9, page 10, it says, I would like to read a statement. Christ Object Lessons, page 122, does not say that the completion of the gospel work is the close of provision, but rather that when the mission of the gospel is completed, the judgment will accomplish the work of separation. That is, as the gospel during the judgment of the living completes its work with its individual, each case is decided in the judgment and each is then separated one from another. This proves that the separation is accomplished during the time of the judgment, not after the close of provision. Therefore, during the judgment of the living, the wheat and the tares must be separated. And the prophet himself plainly told us in tract number 3, page 43, saying, As the cleansings called for in the parables and in Malachi's prophecy have never taken place, the investigative judgment of the living is obviously then yet future. Track number 3, page 43. Now let us go back to SR 101. Separating the tares from the wheat. So it is the tares that had been taken out from among the wheat. Now let us read to SR 101. Peter saw a time when God will judge the church. For the time is come that judgment must begin at the house of God. And if it first begin at us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of God? 1 Peter 4:17. What would be the end of him who enters not the ark of safety, but dares bar the way of others? The ark of safety mentioned here is pointing to the sanctuary, because this work of purification takes place before probation closes. So, the ark of safety, which is called also the place of refuge, it is the sanctuary. Here in 13 Symbolic Code 3 and 4, page 9. 13 Symbolic Code number 3 and 4, page 9. A sanctuary is a place of refuge. So the only place of refuge is the sanctuary. And that is the admonition given by Jesus Christ when Jesus Christ shall begin the atonement for the living. Now let us read again to SR 164. But when our high priest shall begin the atonement for the living, there must be a message of present truth, sounding of the trumpet, urging everyone to lay hold on the lamp of God, Jesus Christ, by which only can he in figure come to the sanctuary, confess his sin, and secure his life. Of course, that is the sanctuary by which the judicial activities in the heavenly sanctuary is extended to that sanctuary. I would like to read track number 3, page 47 and page 48. It says, inescapably, therefore, the Lord's coming to his temple. Malachi 3, verses 1 to 3. He's coming with all his angels. Matthew 25. And his coming enthroned above the living creatures. Ezekiel chapter 1. All three representing the same event as has been shown take place at the beginning of the judgment of the living, the time in which the judicial activities of the heavenly sanctuary extend to the earthly sanctuary, the church. So the sanctuary by which God admonishes us to connect ourselves to come to that sanctuary represents the church by which the judicial activities in the heavenly sanctuary is extended to that church. That statement can easily be understood that that sanctuary is the church by which God bestowed unto them the complete understanding concerning the entire judicial proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. That's what it means by the judicial activities in the heavenly sanctuary is extended to that earthly sanctuary, the church. The full information was given to that church, and that is the ark of safety by which the Word of God is greatly emphasizing here in 2SR page 101. It says, what would be the end of him who enters not the ark of safety, which is the sanctuary, but dares bar the way of others? Not only he refused to enter into that sanctuary, but at the same time, he is hindering others who wish to come in. Now, I would like to read this statement in the Spirit Prophecy in Volume 5, 728. It says, if there are any who do not see and accept the light themselves, Volume 5, 728. If there are any who do not see
and accept the light themselves. Let them not stand in the way of others. Let it not be said of these highly favored people, as of the Jews, when the good news of the kingdom was preached to them, ye entered not in yourselves, and them that were entering in ye hindered. Volume 5, page 728. Now, let's read again the statement. Here in 2SR page 101, it says, what would be the end of him who enters not the ark of safety? It says, but dares bar the way of others. As the prophet saw the day of vengeance upon the sinner in Zion, it is closely connected to our subject, the fifth trumpet, because the last three trumpets are woe trumpets, right? And as far as the shepherd's rod is thus concerned, the trumpet study are symbolical prophecy. Track number 5, page 26, symbolical or literal, which only when this question is rightly answered will we have the correct interpretation to unlock this great symbolical treasure house of truth. And then in page 41, track number 5, it says, for if every term is not symbolical, how shall we differentiate those which are from those which are not? And how shall we know by which to define the truth? Plainly telling that when studying the trumpet study, every term must be symbolical. Now here in Revelation 8, verse 13, it says, and I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, 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 to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound. Whatever that woe might be, it was directly addressed to the inhabitants of the earth. And since we are studying symbolical prophecy, that earth must be symbolical. As a matter of fact, in Revelation chapter 7, verse 3, brothers and sisters, beginning from verse 2, and I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the four angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. So the focal point of such hurting of the angels is the earth and the sea. But the very first mention is the earth. What inhabitants of the earth? The trees, brothers and sisters. And trees represents leadership. Now let me read to you. Track number 8. On page 24, it says here, although the marking and the slaughter of Ezekiel 9 include only the church, Judah and Israel, the hurting by the winds and the hurting by the angels, Revelation 7, include all the world, both the earth and the sea, each of which is indicative of a different locality. The sea in the realm of nature, the storehouse of the waters, is therefore in the realm of symbols, birthplace of the nations, the old country. The earth, the opposite of the sea, is correspondingly a domain away from the old country. It is located to John in the symbol of the thorn beast coming up not out of the sea, but out of the earth. Revelation 13:11. The only place where trees naturally grow. Brothers and sisters, there are only two localities mentioned in Revelation 7, verse 3, verse 4. The earth and the sea. But concerning the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, the message is directed to the trees, by which, according to this reading, in track number 8, page 24, the only place by which trees naturally grow is on the earth, plainly indicating that if there are trees on the sea, it is minority or very seldom. So the trees mentioned here represents the leadership, Now let us continue reading. It says, and as according to Daniel 4, verse 20 to 22, trees are figurative of rulers. And then it says, therefore, the trees in this instance represent the ancient men before the house. Ezekiel 9 verse 6, a fact which reveals that in this period, the church headquarters are in the two-horned beast dominion, the new world, the earth. Where is the headquarters in that period of time? In the new world, the United States of America. By which such statement was grossly misconstrued by many Babylonians. Now let us go back again into SR page 100 and 101. To SR page 100 and 101. It says here, just such ignorance of God's word in the days of Noah brought the world to its destruction by water. A similar wicked condition reduced to ashes the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. If in the days of Christ, just such hypocrisy under the appearance of virtue required the life of the Son of God to preserve the world from destruction, what would the outcome be at this present time? What would be the outcome? Dig deeper, brethren, what the prophet is trying to emphasize. What would the outcome be at this present time? God cannot destroy the world, for he has a multitude to save. And that is pointing to the great multitude which no man could number. Look at this statement in 1 TG 29. 1 TG 29, page 9. It says, God in his wisdom, I would like to read in the upper part, it says, Acans too must be put away before Israel can triumph and take the land. And let's study closely. Who are they, the Acans? That is already in the second section of the Exodus, under the leadership of Joshua. Acans too must be put away before Israel can triumph and take the land. God, in his wisdom, knows that it is better to destroy comparatively few enemies of truth than to lose the whole world. Then it says, all the stumbling blocks must be removed. Who are the stumbling blocks mentioned here? Acans. Acans must be put away. That in God's wisdom, it would be better to destroy few enemies of truth than to lose the whole world, the great multitude. Because there is an appointed time. There is a boundary line that it cannot be passed. God himself set the boundary line. In Acts chapter 17, it says, on verse 26, and hath made of one blood all nations of men, for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and hath determined the times before appointed, and the bounds of their habitation. My prayer is that, hope that this message will reach to the bottom of our hearts, that we will follow Nineveh of old, according to 1 SR page 30. It says, may God lift us from the low spiritual level into which we have fallen, and save us from this Laodicean lukewarm condition. May we, as wise Nineveh of old, defeat the prophecy that heaven may rejoice. Now, I would like to say that this message is directed to all shepherd's rod believers, to all the Bereans throughout the whole world, the antitypical Laodicea. And I would like to prove to you why. Why is it that this message is directed to all the Bereans? Now ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. Who are they? The sons of Levi. Brothers and sisters, the mere fact that in the Bible, in Revelation chapter 7, from verse 5 up to verse 8, in the enumeration, the tribe of Levi is on enumeration number 8. Now let us count one by one. First, Revelation 7 verse 5, Judah. Reuben. Third, Gad. Fourth, Asher. 5, Nephthalim. Then 6, Manasseh. Then 7, Simeon. Then 8, the tribe of Levi. Why? Because It represents the eighth church. To repeat again, brothers and sisters, why is it that in the Bible, the tribe of Levi is in enumeration number 8? It's so because it points out directly to the eighth church in the New Testament succession. Now let me read to you the old symbolic code. It says here, 1 symbolic code, number 4, page 6. 1 symbolic code, number 4, page 6. It says, it follows, I think fourth paragraph, it follows that this work of purification, which the Lord is to perform at His coming, must be accomplished in provisionary time and long before the gospel work is finished. For He cannot finish it with the impure sons of Levi ministry. This particular coming of the Lord is also predicted in volume 5, page 80 and page 690. Brethren, the sons of Levi, that is pointing to the last ordained ministry, the eighth church. Of course, the ministry must exist first before the laity, because the laity was produced by the ministry. And whether you believe it or not, it points out such cleansing among us, all the Bereans throughout the whole world. Who are they, the stumbling blocks? Achan. There is no Achan in the first section of the Exodus under the leadership of Moses. Achan is found in the second section of the Exodus. Now, I would like to read track number 4. Let's read, brothers and sisters. Track number 4, page 31 and page 32. The antitypical valley of Achor, pages 31 and page 32 on track number 4. And also on track number 4, page 54, or also page 56. Now let us read. Antitypical valley of Achor. Had not this remarkable judicial writ been intended for an example, God would not have designated the very place of Achan's punishment. His execution then in the valley of Achor points forward to the time of an antitypical execution within the Christian church. Hence, this antitypical valley of Achor, her door of hope, can but point to the destruction of the sinners pairs in her midst, her illegitimate children. The Berean applied it to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. But look at the picture, 1SR 124. The picture tells the whole story. Symbols do not lie. 1SR 124. The true object is pictured out with unmistakable evidence by the types. 1SR page 226. Now, if you believe that the second section is led by the rod, brothers and sisters, then it must be applied to the Berean, brothers and sisters, because that is represented by the second section. I would like to read answerer number 3, page 21. Thus we see that it was not until after the murmurers were eliminated and in the example that Joshua took over and led the Exodus movement in the land of Canaan. Accordingly, in the antitype, the period before the rod came, the Laodicean period. So the first section in the antitype is the period before the rod came. When does the rod came? 1930. Then it must point out among the media today, brethren, we should not close our eyes. The shepherd's rod made it so plain. In track number 6, let me read to you, on page 11, showing that he recognizes only one denomination. Christ said, and other sheep I have which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. John chapter 10, verse 16. The existing disunion among Christians of today, among the Berean of today, is not therefore fulfilling God's but Satan's predetermined purpose. Our situation today is not fulfilling God's will, God's purpose, but Satan's predetermined purpose. And all Achans must be removed because they were stumbling blocks according to the voice of inspiration. Now, I would like to read again track number 4. by which the shepherd's rod is very plain. It says here in page 43, track number 4, page 43, covet silver and gold. Achan's taking the Lord's money represents that class of church members who covet the silver and the gold which he has set apart for himself, and who thereby rob him of that which is his own, tithes and offerings. Those who withhold that which is his and appropriate it for use according to their own wisdom, as well as those who oppress the hireling in his wages, the widow and the fatherless, and that turn aside the stranger from his right hand, fear not me, saith the Lord of hosts. Malachi 3 verse 5. Are acting Achan's part, and therefore are cursed with a curse, even this whole nation. Now, brothers and sisters, who rob God? Some individually, but the message in Malachi 3 is even directed to a whole nation. What does it mean, brothers and sisters? By that message, that the one who robbed God is the whole nation. It's so because, in spite of the fact that the present truth meet in due season, were not committed to such movement, and still they were collecting tithes and offerings. Now let us read 2TG, number 30. 2TG number 30, page 18. So let us read the statement given by the shepherd's rod. So it says here, brothers and sisters, where is one to look for God's storehouse? Wherever God's truth is for today, from wherever meat in due season is dispensed. It says wherever. That is the statement. Brothers and sisters, wherever God's truth is for today, from wherever meat in due season is dispensed. But these people are repeating the history of the Jewish people. They point to their headquarters. Brothers and sisters, how about the headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church? It was chosen by God through the direction of the prophet from Battle Creek to Washington. But at the time, when the present truth were no longer deposited by God into that headquarters, for what for? Then that headquarters. Study closely the Bible. It's from prophecy, brothers and sisters. Because there is no such eternal favor given by God to any such movement. Look at the Jewish people. Even myself, if I was already existence, at that time, there might be possibility that I might also be deceived by the declaration of the Jews, the leaders in Israel. In Desire of Ages 106, it says, the Jews had misinterpreted God's promise of eternal favor to Israel. Thus saith the Lord, which giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinance of the moon, and of the stars for a light by night, by which divideth the sea, when the waves thereof roar. The Lord of hosts is his name. If those ordinances depart from before me, saith the Lord, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever. Thus saith the Lord, if heaven above can be measured, and the foundation of the earth searched out beneath, I will also cast off all the seed of Israel for all that they have done, saith the Lord. You see, brothers and sisters, that is their foundation. Jeremiah 31, verse 35 to verse 37. That in a glance, it seems that verses showing that whatever may happen, you need to believe the leadership in Israel. And that proof of ancient Israel in reality is even more stronger than the proofs of the people today. What they're after is the organization, not the present truth. But what it says, we need to be after of the truth. It is the truth that we are after, the present truth. You find that statement. Beat what it says. It is the truth that we are after, brothers and sisters. Now let's go back again to this reading. 2TG 30, page 18. The statement, bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, implies that some are already bringing into it, but not all. Or in other words, when this prophecy will find its fulfillment, perfect fulfillment, it says that it implies that some are already bringing into it, but not all. That some is pointing to the living saints. Because this prophecy, Malachi 3, is directly applied in the judgment that pertains to the living. And it says, this along with the charge that the whole nation is robbing God, positively shows that the tithes are now brought not to God's storehouse, but to some other house. What does it mean by house? Movement. I would like to read to you 1TG. Then we'll go back to that reading. Here in 1TG, number 9, page 5, it says, He shall save the tents. That is Zechariah 12 verse 7. Let us read first. Zechariah 12:7. The Lord also shall save the tents of Judah, that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not magnify themselves against Judah. He shall save the tents, the humble dwellings, rather than the houses or palaces of Judah first. That is, the Lord is to save first the common people, the laity, so that the ministry may not exalt themselves above the laity, that all may learn to give glory to God, not to any man. It says, houses or palaces. What is palace? Zion. Zion is the palace grounds. Let's read track number 8, page 5. It says, Mount Zion, the king earthly palace grounds. Track number 8, page 5. And according to White House Recruiter, page 53, it says here, And it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion at headquarters. Where is the headquarters found? Only on the earth, that the trees naturally grow. That is very plain. Track number 8, page 24. What is Zion? Headquarters. The Bidian are so proud and boastful, boasting their headquarters located in the United States of America. Thus, headquarters can recommend us to God. Which is more sacred? The headquarters in the Old Testament in Shiloh, in Mount Moriah, in Mount Zion, those three places in the Old Testament. What happened to those headquarters when they were rejecting the present truth? It was ultimately destroyed by God. Have we learned the lesson in the past? B.T. Hotep says, in the Old Symbolic Code, I would like to read this, by which the prophet emphasizes a solemn warning. For Symbolic Code 4-9, page 2. For Symbolic Code 4-9, page 2. A solemn warning. So this warning is very solemn. It says, at the very time when the acclamation is made, the temple of the Lord are these, temptations come in, and darkness gathers about the soul. Earthliness, selfishness, and self-glorification. There is a necessity for the Lord Himself to communicate His own ideas to the soul. What a thought that instead of our poor, earthly, contracted ideas and plans, the Lord will communicate to us His own ideas, His own thoughts, noble, broad, far-reaching, always leading heavenward. What does it mean by saying, at the very time when the acclamation is made, the temple of the Lord are this? That is figurative speech, meaning, at the moment that we are boasting, saying, this is the headquarters, I will not listen to you, because the only headquarters must be found in the United States of America. That is what's happening right now. While in reality, those headquarters devoid of the spirit of truth. Now let us go back again. And I don't want, brothers and sisters, that the history of the past will be repeated, that there will be no other remedy except destruction. We should not wait such destruction. Let us follow the example given by Nineveh of old. Now, I would like to read to you Consecrated Way to Christian Perfection. Pages 71 and page 72. It says, page 71, what were specifically the lying words in which these people trusted? Here they are. Trust ye not in lying words, saying, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord are this. Jeremiah 7 verse 4. Would you think that is lying words if they will point out the temple that was built in Mount Moriah? That is the temple of the Lord. Of course, in the days of Solomon, God recognizes that temple. But why is it that in the days of Jeremiah emphasizes, do not believe such lying words? Because Prophet Jeremiah are telling the ancient Israel that unless they will repent, that temple will be destroyed by Babylon. But they don't accept the message of Jeremiah. And the rulers in Israel, they were pointing to the temple. The Lord will protect His temple. And they were saying that you, Jeremiah, you are telling a lie. God will protect His temple. The same argument used by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the same argument used by the Davidian. And here the statement given by the Voice of Inspiration in page 72, it says, for such a system, there was no remedy but destruction. And it reminds me that statement in 2SR on page 94 saying, as there is no time left for calling out a new movement, then a message of amazing light and stern rebuke through the Word of God with manifestations of divine judgments is the only remedy that can bring true conversion and reformation. The same statement, right? There is no other remedy except destruction. Brethren, shall we wait such final and ultimate remedy, destruction, before we accept the message? Why not? All of us, the Davidian, come together as one and let us study the sanctuary doctrine, the plan of redemption. To repeat again, brothers and sisters, Achan. There are Achans in the days of B.T. Hotep. There are Achans in the days of Sister White. It might be, but that is not the direct application of the prophecy. Because if there are Achans in the days of Sister White, if there are Achans in the days of B.T. Hotep, they died in natural death. But historically, the Achan in the days of Joshua, they did not die in natural death. They died with the divine judgments. The place by which they had been destroyed is called the Valley of Achor. And in Hosea 2, verse 15, it is called the only door of hope. Now let us read again the statement. It says here, in track number 4, and ponder deeply. It says here, page 32. Unmistakably, the type shows that during this purification, God will destroy not only every sinner among His people, but also their families and all their belongings. Track number 4, page 32. It says, the type also shows that God will undertake this cleansed work among His professed people just before He entrusts them with His very last message to the world, the message of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. The power of this dreadful day is to lighten the earth with His glory and enable His people to repossess the antitypical promised land, the earth. So when the worthless material is consumed, the church, clad in complete armor of light and righteousness, enters upon her final conflict, and the influence of the truth testifies to the world of its sanctifying, ennobling character. Testimonies to Ministers, pages 17 and page 18. Let us read again, brothers and sisters, that the slaughtering in Ezekiel 9 is divided into two divisions. Before the close of provision and after the close of provision. The close of provision mentioned there, brothers and sisters, is the close of provision that pertains to the Sabbath keepers, because Ezekiel 9 cannot be applied to the world. The Shepherd's Rod says here in 1TG number 3, page 12, it says, the angels have charge of the city, Jerusalem, not of the world, and not of Babylon. Even an altogether uninformed Christian knows that the terms Jerusalem, Judah, and Israel mean the church, never even as much as imply the world. They have always meant the church and always will mean the church, for that is what they are. 1TG number 3, page 12. Now, who will be slaughtered in Ezekiel 9? Only the church, or only Judah and Israel, not the world. Who are they? The church that will be slaughtered, brothers and sisters, before the close of provision. Under deeply, brethren. Now, I would like to focus again to our main subject concerning the purification of the church. And we already read in track number 4 that all Achan will be destroyed in the purification of the church. I would like to read to you this reading in 1SR 170. It says, the coming of the Lord with fire 1 SR 117. The coming of the Lord with fire to render his anger with fury is not the coming of Christ in the clouds to receive his people. It is before the close of provision and in the time of the purification of the church. So that is very plain. In the time of the purification of the church. Now, let us read again, brethren. I would like to read 1 TG, number 30, page 19. 1 TG, number 30, page 19. It says here, Isaiah 4, verse 3, And it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion and he that remaineth in Jerusalem shall be called holy, even everyone that is written among the living in Jerusalem. And it says in 1 TG 30, page 19. This verse clearly shows that while none of the wicked in the church will survive the purification, yet none of the righteous will perish. Indeed, all that are left will be called holy and will enjoy even greater security than did his ancient people at the time they left Egypt. 1 TG, number 30, page 19. Now, we read several times 1 TG number 6, page 38. The same verse that had been quoted in 1 TG 30, page 19. So let us read again. 1 TG number 6, page 38. It is obvious that the righteous escape the destruction of these sinners in the church. What is the very first one mentioned? Zion. Why is it that the voice of inspiration says, left in Zion? And in Jerusalem, the term used is remaineth. Then it says, only the holy ones, those whose names are left written in the book. This book cannot be the book on the earth. That is the book mentioned in Daniel 12. Only the holy ones, those whose names are left written in the book, escape the destruction that falls upon the wicked in the church. Brethren, at the commencement of the judgment for the living, the church recognized by God is no longer the Seventh-day Adventist church. The church mentioned here, I would like to read 1 TG, number 23, and number 22 first. 1 TG, number 22, page 24. When this judgment-bound nation begins to gather together, then it is, if never before, that the meek of the earth need to seek meekness. So when this judgment-bound nation begins to gather together, why is it that they were gathering together? Although we will discuss that on the subject, when World War II will be resumed. But I would like to read to you, 2 TG 41, page 17. 2 TG 41, 17. The world sees communism as a hydra-headed monster behind a bush, and the nations are already, so to speak, smiting their knees one against the other while they look at it. And I think one that threatens the whole world today concerning communism, it is China. And for sure, it is found in prophecy. And we'll discuss that on the subject when World War II will be resumed. Now here, brothers and sisters, 1 TG 22-24. The meek of the earth are those who have brought the Lord's judgments, who have proclaimed the message of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. They are His people, His church. Whose church mentioned here? Who proclaimed the great and dreadful day of the Lord? General Conference Special, page 39. The judgment for the dead, furthermore, is not the message of the great and dreadful day. It does not even touch on the prophecies of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. The only message that was bestowed by God to the Seventh-day Adventist Church is the judgment that pertains to the dead. And that message do not even touch the message of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Logically then, they could not be that church that proclaimed the message of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. The only people under the sun that proclaim the message of the great and dreadful day of the Lord, they are the Davidians, the shepherds' rod believers. But not all shepherds' rod believers are meek. According to 1 TG 41, pages 24 and 25, Moreover, he was anointed to preach to the meek, to those who are not self-sufficient, not high-minded, but humble and teachable. The other class could not be taught. The other class are self-sufficient, high-minded, brothers and sisters, boastful, and very proud. So this message is directed only to the shepherd's rod believers, the meek, humble, and teachable. Now here, brothers and sisters, I would like to read to you in 1 TG 26:17. 1 TG 26:17. It says, quoting Micah chapter 5, verse 9, thy hand shall be lifted up upon thine adversaries, and all thine enemies shall be cut off. All the enemies of Christ shall be cut off. And it says in 1 TG 26:17, according to Christ's parables, the time his adversaries, his enemies of progressive truth are cut off is at the commencement of the purification of the church at the harvest time. What is the meaning of cut off? Discharge. I would like to read 1 TG 26:22. While the Lord with a message of warnings and reproofs makes a siege against his people, the adversaries gather together in groups, troops, to oppose. Then they are to be cut off. The horses, leaders, shall be cut off, discharged, and the chariots, gathering places, destroyed. God's people are to be thoroughly purged of sin and sinners, and only the penitent are to be left. They are the remnant of Jacob, who shall not do iniquity, nor speak lies, neither shall a deceitful tongue be found in their mouth. For they shall feed and lie down, and none shall make them afraid. Zephaniah 3 verse 13. They are to be gathered into their homeland, from thence to go as missionaries to the Gentiles. To the penitent, they are to be as dew and showers, but to the impenitent as lions among the beasts and flocks. So what does it mean by cut off? Discharge. When? At the commencement of the purification of the church. Now, when does the commencement of the purification of the church? It says, at the harvest time. The enemies of progressive truth. Who are they? Enemies of progressive truth. What is progressive truth? Present truth. This is the very message. The progressive truth. Rising higher and higher every day. And the enemies of that progressive truth, they will be cut off. When? At the commencement of the purification of the church. Here in 1 TG, number 17, on pages 3 and page 4, it says, in short, 1 TG number 17, pages 3 and 4, in short, the harvest is the day of cleansing, the day of judgment, the antitypical day of atonement, the day in which the sinners are cut off. When does the sinners are cut off? In that antitypical day of atonement. And that is pointing to the final day of atonement. I would like to read 1 SR 177. 1 SR page 177. That is, after the separation, purification. So, purification and separation are synonymous terms, pointing to the same event. What does it mean by the word remnant? It says here in 1 SR 102. What constitutes the remnant? The definition of remnant is that which is left after the separation. The same statement here in 1 SR 177, that is, after the separation, purification, those who are left, the 144,000, being the remnant, the affliction is the time of purification. So that is illustrated on the Day of Atonement. The divine command, it says, afflict your soul. Now let us read Leviticus 23. It says, Leviticus 23 verse 29. For whatsoever soul it be that shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off from among his people. And when would that be? That time of affliction. That is the time of the purification of the church. The affliction is the time of purification. 1 SR 177. What is the purification? Track number 1, page 20. Since the purification or the sealing came at the commencement of the loud cry, as we have already seen, the 144,000 are therefore the first fruits, the first to be sealed. The purification is the period of the sealing of the 144,000. But that is the first phase of the sealing, the beginning of the harvest. We explained several times in answerer number 2, page 36, harvest is a period of time having a beginning and ending. And that is why the 144,000, they have a double seal, because the sealing of the 144,000 is in 2 phases. The first phase is pointing to the sealing message. In 1 SR page 29, the 144,000 having this seal are also marked, sealed by the angel of Revelation 7, which is the same as the one of Ezekiel 9. In other words, it may be termed a double seal. The first seal is concerning the sealing message, which is the present truth. Because according to 1 SR page 28, it says, according to these scriptures, we must conclude that the saints of God in all ages are sealed with present truth, and whatever that present truth is, that is the seal. And that is where our righteousness is measured, whether our names to be retained in the Lamb's Book of Life, or whether our names to be blotted out. That's what it means by the sealing message. At the time when the present truth is proclaimed, it says in 2 SR 164, but when our high priest shall begin the atonement for the living, there must be a message of present truth, urging everyone to lay hold on the Lamb of God, which is Jesus Christ, come to the sanctuary to confess your sin and to secure your life. That is the sanctuary by which the present truth, under the judgment that pertains to the living, was bestowed by God, and our attitude towards present truth, 2 SR 198, is what decides our eternal destiny. Whether our names will be retained in the Lamb's Book of Life, or whether it will be blotted out. That's why I remember the statement in 2 SR. The voice of inspiration declared clearly, brothers and sisters, that in 2 SR 218, there would be no necessity for that class to fall by the figure of the 5 men with the slaughter weapons. It is the reception or rejection of the message that will fix the destiny of the 2 classes. 2 SR 218, there would be no necessity for that class to fall by the figure of the 5 men with the slaughter weapons. Whether you believe it or not, in reality, it is even more applied to the Davidian rather than to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. There will be no necessity that there is a Davidian to be slaughtered. But the fact is, our reception or rejection of the message of present truth that will fix our own destiny. And at the moment that you have such attitude, Laodicean attitude, all of the Davidian is thinking that the present truth is in their midst, then how could you accept any message while you believe that all the message do you have already? And that is stated in 1TG. It says here in 1TG number 8. On page 1TG number 8, brothers and sisters, page 20. Is there anything which could more completely and more quickly sever one's communication line with God forever than an attitude of having all the truth and of having need of no more? 1TG number 8, page 20. Is there anything which could more completely and more quickly sever one's communication line with God forever than an attitude of having all the truth and of having need of no more? That is the attitude of the Davidian today. But I know there are meek among the Davidian, humble and teachable. Now let us go back again, brothers and sisters, to the statement in 2 SR 100 and 101. It says, if God's ideal is to bless the world through the medium of His church on earth, and we already proven with absolute fact that the church in the time of the judgment that pertains to the living is the church that proclaimed the great and dreadful day of the Lord, and it could not be applied to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now, brothers and sisters, it says, if God's ideal is to bless the world through the medium of His church on earth, and they to whom the gospel for the world is committed have left the sheep and are serving the devil in the persons of themselves, where is the hope of the world? The mere fact that the shepherd's rod emphasizes the place because it points out to the fulfillment of the prophecy recorded in the book of Daniel in Daniel chapter 8. That in the third period of the exceeding great horn, the entire symbolical earth is under control by the devil. The exceeding great horn bears rule all over the earth. Number 7 indicates all. And the voice of inspiration says that the word all does not exclude any. Here in 1 SR 218, it says, the biblical number 7 is used as a symbol meaning all. Therefore, the symbol does not exclude any, but means all. So that's what it means by the word all, does not exclude any. Now, brethren, do you believe the Bible? The shepherds had made it so plain that if Daniel made a mistake, then God would correct Daniel. Let's read 2 SR 139. The horn bears rule over all the earth. That is pointing to the exceeding great horn. Then it says, these are facts which cannot be denied. However, there is another fruit that bears evidence of the same, say the prophet, and after thee, king of Babylon, shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall be ruled over all the earth. Daniel 2 verse 39. The brass kingdom is accepted to represent Grecia, but the fact is that Grecia never did bear rule over all the earth. Now that statement, be rule all over the earth, who is the focal point? It is God's people. The same way the description of the great red dragon, it does not point out to the people in the world. Now, brothers and sisters, brass, according to track number 2, has a numerical value of number 3. Track number 2 on page 13. So, the prophecy in Daniel 2 verse 39 is pointing to the third period of the exceeding great horn. Now let us read track number 3, page 39. It says, and as the great horn of the he-goat is symbolical of the Roman world, represented by iron in Daniel 2 verse 40, in its 3 periods, pagan, ecclesiastical, and Protestant, also as in its second period, it trod the truth and the host underfoot and polluted the sanctuary by bringing in the abominations while it practiced and prospered. Daniel 8 verse 12, the 2,300-day period accordingly extends beyond the fall of ecclesiastical Rome and reaches into the Protestant period. So the last and the third period of the exceeding great horn is the Protestant period, brothers and sisters. And in that period of time, it was predicted beforehand that the sanctuary will be polluted, will be trodden underfoot. But the absolute fact, according to the shepherd's rod, no, it is not the sanctuary itself, but the place itself. What is the third period? Because the first period is pagan. The second period is papal. Therefore, it must be from 1798 onwards, the third period. Then what sanctuary? There is no other sanctuary except the Seventh-day Adventist Church. 1 TG, number 23, page 6. I would like to read the statement, brothers and sisters, beginning from page 5. From this we see that the Assyria under discussion exists in the time of the end, the time in which the great and dreadful day of the Lord takes place. That is the judgment for the living. This Assyria, therefore, is an antitype of ancient Assyria. Assyria church inspiration is a rejoicing city that dwells carelessly, that says in her heart, I am and there is none beside me. Zephaniah 2:15. At this point, let us pause a moment and summarize the characteristics by which this modern Assyria is to be identified. As man looks at things, She is so great that there is none like her. She is well instructed in the things of God. She is oppressive, a hard-ruling nation. She has polluted the sanctuary and has declared the law of God void. Then what nation is that polluted the sanctuary and declared the law of God void? The English-speaking people. According to the next paragraph, it says, there is but one people under the sun that answer to all these descriptions, and that people is, of course, the English-speaking people, in whose midst is the church, and from whose midst the gospel and the Bible flowed out to all nations. As clear as language can make it, the burden of the prophet Zephaniah is for the English-speaking Christian world. 1 TJ 23, page 6. That is the United States of America. Brothers and sisters, what they did, they polluted the sanctuary. But the fact is that, according to tract number 4, page 26, it says, note that the truth and the place, not the sanctuary itself. Not only the sanctuary, but the place. Where is that place? United States of America. That is both Christ's truth and His place. In the earthly sanctuary, the 4 great denominations in 2 SR 268 never been called sanctuary because they were in total darkness concerning the daily and the sanctuary. So what does it mean? Trodden underfoot, it says, so that the knowledge as to His mediatorial work became obscured. Brethren, do not pretend that you have knowledge of Christ's mediatorial work in the heavenly sanctuary, because that knowledge was bestowed by God to the church in the wilderness, not in the vineyard. So this study, brothers and sisters, is a very urgent message to all the Bedeans, more particularly in the United States of America. I would like to read to you this reading in tract number 14. Let me see if I could find that statement. The messenger, according to the voice of inspiration, he go to the mountains rather than to the valleys. I would like to find that statement. I think that is in tract number 14. His message is directed openly to the mountains rather than to the valleys. So page 4. So I would like to read to you. Pages 3 and page 4. God is slow to anger and great in power. His way is in the whirlwind and in the storm. The clouds are the dust of His feet. He is jealous and will take vengeance on His adversaries. He is also stronghold in the day of trouble and knows them that trust in Him. But He will make an utter end of the wicked. Darkness shall pursue His enemies. Affliction shall not rise up a second time. Nahum beholds 2 great powers in conflict, projected to a day when everything on wheels moves like lightnings. Then by way of sharp contrast, he focuses attention on one who walks openly on the mountains, not obscurely in the valleys, and who publishes peace rather than war. He urges Judah to be faithful in order to effect that peace, assuring her that the wicked will no longer be in her midst, and that she will be set free from the Assyrian yoke. At the same time, he beholds God's great power, His jealousy over His people, and His vengeance of their enemies. What is mountains? To represent leadership. This message is directed to all the leadership. We broadcast this message openly to all the mountains, not obscurely in the valleys, because that is the most common. Many messengers, they will go to the members rather than to the leaders. But this message is directed to all leadership before everything is too late, brothers and sisters, because the boundary line is almost over. And do not wait God's divine judgments before we acknowledge that the message is from God. To repeat again, brothers and sisters, to all my beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America, all Shepherd's Rod believers, here in 2SR 258, it says, my brethren, these words are not against you. All these words that we broadcast every day are not against the Bedean. For it is God speaking through His word of truth to save you from the bottomless pit. Will you not let him work for you and for his people? Will you not be his sheep? Hoping that all the Bereans will, all without any exemption, like Nineveh of old, they accepted the message, they humbled themselves, bring into a deep humility and repentance to defeat the prophecy. If that is the case, then for sure, none among Shepherd's Rod believers will lose out. But if we will continue to reject the message, brethren, you cannot do it forever. We are already in the solemn time, brothers and sisters. What shall the end be of them who obey not the gospel? And not only that they did not obey the gospel, they did not accept the message, they bars the way of others in accepting it. What is the answer? Woe to the sinners in Zion. To repeat again, brothers and sisters, the focal point of the message in Revelation chapter 5, that no man in heaven, no man on earth, neither under the earth, that can be able to open that book, brothers and sisters. And what does it mean to open that book? The significance is that it is guaranteed by God that no man in heaven, neither on earth, neither under the earth, pointing to the fallen angels, that they could be able to explain even a little point concerning the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. Only Michael, the Lion in the tribe of Judah, Jesus Christ, the Spirit of Christ, the Spirit of truth, can do it. Have you not yet discovered that when Sister White declared that the commencement of the judgment of the dead commenced in October 22, 1844, there is not even one single human being that had been able to explain what happened from 1844 onwards. Even preconceived ideas and opinions never been allowed by God. Nobody had been able to explain the proceedings when Jesus Christ ascended to heaven in May 27, 31 AD. From 44 AD, when Jesus Christ entered to the holy place, to 1844, 1,800 years, Christ's mediatorial work in the holy place. Nobody had been able to explain it. Even the devil either. Brothers and sisters, he had not been able even to teach any counterfeit to confuse God's people. But Satan had been completely set bound by the power of God. That is why it says in 2 TJ 24:16, that at the time that it will be explained, all must humbly admit that God is at work. That the last church, the 11th hour church, according to 4 BC 11:39, they are privileged to see by faith what is going on in the heavenly sanctuary. And the entire proceedings, from start to finish, it was revealed by God to the last church in the last generation of men. And we will show to you, from start to finish, the entire proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. May the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. See you in our next episode. Thank you very much for listening and viewing this program. Have a beautiful and wonderful evening.